Looks like he's had a spelling bee now.
Yeah.
My neighbor's an attorney, but she's
Well, now we can start. Perfect time to shoot.
Okay, I would like to call the meeting to order of the City of Monona Planning Commission, Monday, October 24th, 2022. Would you please call the roll?
Chair Moore,
Here.
Alder Holmquist,
Here.
Ms. Fallett,
Here.
Mr. Homburg,
Here.
Mr. Stein,
Here.
Mr. Conrad,
Here.
Mr. Grice. I see he's online, and Ms. Fox is excused.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 10th, 2022? Move approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any changes, corrections, additions? Hearing none?
No, I
Oh, sorry.
on page 2, the finding of fact. I believe it was just an exception to the sign granted because of its keeping with the adjacent signs, not necessarily due to the shape. Because we had the discussion of the shape, but the reason for the approval and exception had to do with the adjacent signage, not because of the shape.
Thank you. Just FYI, down at this end, you gotta really, the new shape doesn't work for being able to spot people at this end. So thank you for the additional flagging down there. Any other changes? As amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, or the minutes carry. We'll go to the appearance section. Is anybody here to appear that is not part of the agenda this evening? Online or elsewhere?
So maybe we can introduce the
I would love to have you introduce.
Excellent. Pleased to introduce Thor Jepson, the new assistant planner here at the City of Monona. He started the first week in October, and this is the start of week 4. He's already been watching a couple of these meetings online, helping with the minutes and actually one of the agenda items here coming up. But just wanted to ask him to join this meeting in person, meet you all, put a face to the name, and I'll pass over to him to introduce himself. But very excited to have him here at the city, have some additional assistance in the planning department. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So I'm Thor Jepson. Like Doug said, I'm here for 3 weeks now. This is week 4. I'm really excited to be here and really enjoying everything so far. I have a background in planning and natural resources management. I got degrees in both of those from UW-Madison. For the past 3 years, I was working with the State Department of Transportation as a planner there, doing a little bit of travel demand modeling, land use modeling, a little bit of environmental and equity analysis for some of the long-range modal plans that the department was working on. And some MPO and RPC coordination and liaison duties. So I live on the east side of Madison with my wife and my 8-month-old daughter, and yeah, I'm just really excited for what's next with this opportunity. So thank you.
Thanks, welcome. Happy to have you here. I know Doug is especially happy to have you here, given his schedule. So, welcome aboard. With that, we'll go, there is no unfinished business, number 5, so we'll go to new business, number 6A, public hearing on the request by Taco John's, represented by Capital City Signs, for approval of new wall signs and a new landscape ground sign at 6305 Monona Drive, case number S-016-2022.
Run through this one, if that's okay.
Yeah. So this being the public hearing, Taco John's or Capital City Signs, you are most welcome to provide us with any additional information, especially because the public doesn't necessarily read our packet, our packet, to share any information around this during this public hearing section. Anybody here to represent?
Sheila.
Sheila. Sheila.
Yes, I'm here. I'm
Great.
at home. Yeah, I am just here to answer any questions. What's happening is the location is updating its look to be the more current Taco John look, and that included a new logo and so new signs. It hasn't been updated, I guess, since 2010, which is kind of a long time. Especially when people are updating all the time. And they took down the existing signs and they've kind of updated the building a little, and now the new signs are essentially the same size as the ones they took down. They're the same height, but just because of the different style, it was used to be an uppercase situation and now it's upper and lowercase, so the square footage changes a little bit just because of the up and down nature of that. But there's 3 signs on the building previously, and they want to put 3 signs on the building now. And the ground sign is going to stay the same. It's just going to be refaced. It's going to just have a new polycarbonate put. And then the entrance sign as well, but that's just staying as it is. It doesn't have their logo on it.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else here on behalf of this application?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. Great, then we will close the public hearing on the request by Taco John's, A, and go to B, consideration of action on the request by Taco John's, represented by Capital City Signs, for approval of new wall signs and a new landscape ground sign at 6305 Monona Drive, case number S-016-2022. Thor?
All right, yeah, so this proposal is for 3 new wall signs at 6305 Monona Drive, and also 1 monument sign to be refaced. Wall sign 1 is a approximately 55 square foot LED illuminated direct mount channel letter sign facing east towards Monona Drive. Wall sign 2 is a approximately 15 square foot LED illuminated direct mount channel letter sign facing north at the drive-through order window. Wall sign 3 is a 16 square foot LED illuminated circular cabinet sign facing south at the drive-through pickup window. And then the monument sign is a approximately 27 square feet and 5 feet tall LED illuminated cabinet sign. That is the existing cabinet retainers and stone base and LED lighting system will remain, just getting a new acrylic face. And the existing non-illuminated directional enter sign is to remain as is. This parcel is zoned retail business. Zoning code permits 1 wall sign per building facade, which abuts public street frontage, and wall signs are allowed 1 square foot per foot of building facade length that abuts that frontage, with a maximum of 150 square feet. And 1 monument sign is allowed per site. Monument signs are allowed 60 square feet in area, 5 feet in height, and must be 15 feet from the street curb face. Wall sign 1, as proposed, currently exceeds the city sign code for sign area by about 23 square feet. But the proposed 54.95 square foot sign is a reduction in size compared to the current 72 square foot sign, largely because it removes the additional tagline that was on the existing sign. Wall sign 2, as proposed, is approximately 15 square feet. It will have improved contrast against the facade, but will be slightly larger than the existing sign, which is about 14 square feet. And wall sign 3, as proposed, is approximately 16 square feet. Will also have improved contrast against the facade, but will be larger than the existing sign, which is approximately 14 square feet. Wall signs 2 and 3, as proposed, are on building facades which do not abut a public street frontage. But this site was granted an exception for the 3 wall signs during their applications in 2001 and again in 2010. And for reference, in 2013, the Commission approved additional wall signs for the McDonald's at 4905 Monona Drive, which has additional wall signs on the north and south building facades which abut drive-through lanes. That building has public street frontages on the east facade on Monona Drive and the west on Gordon Avenue. The Commission should discuss the appropriateness of these additional signs when compared to other drive-through establishments on Monona Drive and the Commission's previous approvals of additional wall signs at this site. The Commission should also discuss the appropriateness of considering the combined size of the 3 wall signs. As proposed, the combined size is 85.9 square feet, a reduction from the current approximate total of 100 square feet and less than the 100 square foot maximum permitted by code. And the monument sign is proposed maintains the size and location of the current sign, and the current seasonal landscaping is to remain. The Commission may choose to discuss the appropriateness of the proposal and if a signage exception may be considered for this tenant. Should you approve the application, suggested findings of fact and conditions of approval are included below. And I should also add that the property is subject to the Monona Drive Urban Design Guidelines for signage that states that commercial signage should reflect a balance between allowing adequate signage for business identification, legibility, and visibility, and protecting the aesthetic of the overall streetscape. That's all.
Thank you, George. With that, I will open it up to the Commission. Brian, you want to start?
Sure. Initially, when I first looked at this, I was curious of just thinking that it seems to be oversigned for the location. And then kind of reading through some of the exceptions and looking at some of the other similar type businesses, but particularly where this property is in adjacent to the large hill on Monona Drive, and looking at the idea of being able to travel south and north, and will you have good visibility of the either frontage sign or the landscape monument sign? And I think there is some argument to say that if you're traveling southbound and you're in actually the left-hand lane or the most eastern lane, if there's cars traveling next to you, you would likely not see the landscape ground sign. And the facade sign on that north side of the building does then represent kind of the frontage sign that may draw your attention to where you're going. I'm not sure that same holds true for the sign on the south of the building. However, that one I think is much smaller in comparison. I don't think it's really a call out for the building per se. I think it's just kind of a replacement for the sign that exists there. I think if we do approve this, I would want us to have the findings of fact be much more regarding the current facts rather than basing it on previous decisions as our finding of fact. So just my initial 2 cents.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, when I looked at this, it's kind of a remove and replace with a slight reduction in the overall signage, so I didn't have a lot of problem with that. It seems appropriately signed. It's not ostentatious, it's a simple rebranding. And so I find no issues with the sign as it proposed.
Okay. Chris?
It looks fine to me. I don't have any issues with the rebrand, which, as you said, is essentially what it is. I am glad to see condition of approval number 3. If the glare from the lighting is deemed to be excessive by the Plan Commission, then the Plan Commission may require adjustments to the lighting, because we haven't seen what they look like. And bright signs can be a hazard and an annoyance, so I'm glad to see that's in there.
Okay.
That's all.
Corey?
I didn't have any concerns with this.
Okay. Okay. Chris?
I think overall it's fine. I think the south sign's too big. You know, when you look at the first one where they show in our packet, it looks in proportion. When you look at the back one that's to scale, it's massive there. And I don't think you need a sign that big on that facade. I don't know what the old sign was, probably 12 inches high or something. I remember when Joe came in for that approval, it was more or less just to let people know there was a drive-through there. But right now it looks like they're trying to be seen from Monona Drive with it. Yeah, see, that looks fine. But then when you go back to where it's to scale, it's 4 foot. It's a 4 foot diameter badge. It's from the floor. It's that tall. I don't see any reason for a sign that big there. And then the other comment would be, again, to the condition about the glare, and I think the sign manufacturer just needs to be careful with the opacity of that white background. The reason we do that is we've had issues with all white backgrounds on Monona Drive where it just glares, and it's actually a glare for drivers going by, so we've always asked people to, they can put a backing on it to tone it down a little bit. I understand they want a white background, but it can't be glaring. And we will come back and have it redone if it is.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Brendan, go ahead.
I agree with Chris's comments. You know, the white background as far as glare to the street. You know, swapping out that yellow sign for a white sign in that location, I think that's going to be pretty visually distracting. I could go either way as it relates to 4 foot diameter on the one over the drive-through. I do agree that it seems, to Brian's comment, that a lot about the location feels very heavily signed. It is kind of in a tucked away spot. You know, the building is quite a ways set back. The north and south of that location, I don't think it's easy to see those from the street. I think the only sign that you really see from the street is going to be the main monument sign. And yeah, I equally share Chris's concern about the level of glare for a white background sign. I think that's gonna be really visually dominating or visually dominant in that location.
Right. Okay. Any other comments from commission members?
Can Sheila tell us, does the sign have the ability to adjust its brightness, or is that like a whole new bulb swap out?
We could dim or put fewer LEDs in. It does have called out a diffuser on the back to lessen the brightness as well. It's a clear acrylic and it's going to have digital print. I understand that it would be bright. But we could maybe even put a dimmer in there to make it less bright.
What's the color temperature of?
If in practice it becomes too bright in that area, but it is far enough from the street that I don't think it would be a traffic brightness because it is set back, and it might just provide light to the drive-through for the customers going through.
Chris, do you want to ask your question again?
Are you able to tell us, Sheila, the color temperature of the white light?
I do not have that information here. I'm installing this for another manufacturer, so I was not given that information. It just is telling me white LED, and it's usually a pretty cool white is when they put them in.
Yeah, that's my concern.
The actual
the
white
brighter. She can hear me. Yeah, my concern is that cool white.
I mean, if it does become a problem, we could we do sometimes do the face with an opaque white background and then only the red glows. We could just reface this so that the background is not shining and only the red and the taco would glow. And that's a lot of times what we do when they don't want the brightness.
Yeah, that sounds a lot safer.
Okay. Any other comments, questions about what's on the floor? Would anybody like to make a motion as it relates to what's on the floor?
Sure, I'll move approval with the finding of facts changed a little bit, which I would strike the first one and have the exception of the signage area being due to the proposed signs is a decrease in the cumulative area in comparison to the existing signs, as well as a rebranding of the signage. Item 3 would stay, and the conditions of approval would stay, and I think item 3 is if we could add an item that indicates that additional approval can be made by staff as needed to meet the color temperature, as well as, or the addition of an acrylic panel to change that light to have the red and the taco illuminated and the white not, and have that be at staff approval.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Chris, number 2. I understand that. Okay.
And I think that last one captured what it is that I think, Chris, you were highlighting. Chris, number 2.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
To clarify, that was
Yeah.
condition of approval number 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have a motion and a second? Yep, yes.
So what you added is condition 4, so condition 3 is still there, that plan commission can require it to be toned down, and it's not.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Is
discussion?
there any questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Does she have any questions for us?
Yeah, do you have any questions for us, findings of fact or conditions of approval?
No, we would be allowed to install it as proposed, and then if there were any changes, we'd have to go back in and just tone it down, as it were. The lighting, is that the only issue, is the possibility that white is going to be too bright?
Yep, so condition 3 was it could come back to plan commission if there was a determination of the glare. Item 4 was if you're looking at a consideration of changing that panel to be opaque, you can work that out with staff if that's a decision that you guys make.
Okay, we would have to come back to meeting then.
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion with the conditions of approval on the floor. Yeah, Chris?
Well, just for the applicant's benefit, where we had this problem in the past, they have gone back and what she calls a diffuser, it just increases the opacity of it. We have had white signs where they increased the opacity of that enough where it's still shown a little white, but it wasn't that big glare that we're worried about.
Right.
So I think, I don't know what type of diffuser they have, but we have had signs like that work. So it's just what we're sensitive to is the ones that don't, that are really bright.
Right. So suffice it to say, I think it would be, in your best interest to obviously, what we're sensitive about, and so anything that you can do to mitigate it to avoid coming back to see us would be obviously preferred. I'm sure by all. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive. We will test it out before we install it, just to see what the brightness is compared to the red, even, because the other ones are red, so they're not as, in your face about it,
Right.
The color. So yeah, we will definitely be cognizant of that. And then if it does come down to it, we could, like I said, make it so that the white is totally blacked out.
Right. Terrific. So I have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll now move to item number 6, public hearing for North Point Development Corporation and Dream Lane Real Estate Group on the request for consideration for a certified survey map, CSM, for the site located approximately 1208 East Broadway for a 75-unit residential development. Case number 2-029-2022. Once again, this is North Point's opportunity and Dream Lane's opportunity to share whatever you would like as it relates to the CSM, the application.
Hi, this is Justin Dampart as your director here on behalf of North Point Development. Before you tonight, we have a one-lot CSM that will be combining 2 lots into one for the previously GDP-approved Broadway loft and townhome development. And so we're just here to answer any questions that you may have in regards to that lot combination.
Are you the only one here this evening, Mike?
Mike Marty with Veerbecker. I'm the surveyor who prepared the certified survey map. It's a fairly straightforward land division, combining 2 parcels into one unified parcel. With respect to access, we would be getting access to East Broadway from the private outlot. And what we would do then is work at getting those other 2 access easements released once those 2 parcels are combined into the one unified parcel. Because lot 4 really doesn't have any access until these lots get combined into one. There was a DOT access point on the north side of lot 4, but in communication with the DOT, that was not an approved access point, so that's why we don't show it on the certified survey map. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward lot consolidation. We're not creating any new parcels. We're actually decreasing the amount of parcels. And I am also here to answer any questions that the Plan Commission may have.
Great, thank you. With that, unless somebody else is here to speak, the pre-hearing I will close the pre-hearing and move to item, the public hearing and move to the pre-hearing conference for North Point Development Corporation and Dreamline Real Estate Group on the request for consideration of the CSM certified survey map for the site located approximately 1208 East Broadway for a 75-unit residential development, case number 2-029-2022.
Thank you. So, as mentioned, the proposal here is to consolidate the eastern 2 lots to facilitate the development of the Broadway Lofts General Development Plan. The CSM is being considered prior to the potential request of the Precise Implementation Plan, PIP, which is also working around the roadway private drive design process for the larger parcel. So that is also underway. We're expecting an application any day now for that as well. So the 2 lots are associated with different CSMs. The western lot is associated with CSM 15061, and the eastern lot is part of CSM 8819. Because this is a consolidation and no new lots are being created, there is not an issue despite the CSM 15061 being recorded in 2018, so within the last 5 years, which is typically a discussion point. Access to streets is required, and as mentioned, the proposed combination would make use of the 50-foot wide private driveway, which connects to East Broadway, the county highway, which has a width of 120 feet. There are no changes proposed as part of the CSM that would impact the private outlot, the private drive that was established when CSM 15061 was recorded. As mentioned by the applicant, the 2 24-foot wide Access easements would be released as part of this process. And one point that the Commission may choose to discuss is details of any future private easements, utilities, and those types of items, and how they may work coming onto the site for the development, but also the future adjacent lots, how they will be managed. The proposed lot would be just over 3 acres, 3.044, and would be able to accommodate the total of 75 units as proposed in the approved GDP. This will also need Public Works Committee review, and it is scheduled for the November 2nd meeting, as well as potential formal City Council consideration after formal consideration with the Plan Commission. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a pre-hearing conference. So with that, I'll open it up to the Commission. Chris, number one, would you like to start?
Yeah, no issues with it. It's exactly what we anticipated when we approved the GDP for that property. I would say as far as future easements that might pertain to these developments, those would be more of a thing we would approve with those developments as they come in. For example, the utility easements to serve these lots and the private access on that outlot, which is really the future road. I think the time to look at easements for those would be once we give a final approval to a PIP. That would be a requirement of that to record that easement.
Right.
As far as what's there, I'm fine. I look forward to seeing our consultants' review of it and see if they have any issues. But I think it's what we anticipated.
Great. Thank you. Corey?
No comments.
Chris, number two?
The proposed CSM looks good to me.
Okay. All right.
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add. Okay. Right.
No additions.
Okay. How's that for feedback? Sorry, Brendan. I always have to remember that we have. We can barely see you on the screen up there. Go ahead.
I didn't have any additional comments. I was just reminding you that I was out here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. Great. So to the applicants, do you have any questions of the Commission?
No, I think we've got what we need at this point.
Okay, great. Justin, thanks much.
All right, thank you.
We'll move to item number 6E, public hearing on the request by River Place Dental for consideration of a zoning permit for construction of a new dental office at 605 West Broadway. Case number 2-030-2022. Welcome. It's, sorry. I was looking over on the screen. I thought you had some people over there, but welcome. Go right ahead.
My name is Matt Tills. I'm an architect working on the project with Dr. Laura Tills and Matt Cutts. I believe that Dr. Matt Cutts would like to make sort of an initial comment, and then he'll probably turn it over to me, and then I can take it from there.
Terrific. Go right ahead.
Hello. Hi, Matt Cutts here. Dentist at Monona River Place Dental. Sorry I'm a little under the weather. Just recovering from a little bit of an illness right now, but otherwise I would have been there in person. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm one of 2 dentists and owners at Monona River Place Dental. We've been there for 18 years in Monona. We've been eyeing up the current project property for the last couple of years. We're really excited about the project that we have before you today, and that's basically all I wanted to say.
Great, thank you. Now go right ahead.
All right, great. Do I have control of the? Well, you just building all slides. Yes. While he's coming up here, I can go ahead and get started. Like I said, my name is Matt Tills. We've been working on this project for probably 3 or 4 months in earnest. Would you like me to keep going, or should I?
No, you.
Okay. And
as Matt Cutts mentioned, this particular site, both of the doctors were really interested in and have been, driving by routinely over the past years, and identified it as a really amazing opportunity for them to relocate their practice, which has been in River Place Dental for the last 18 years. And
he's got to give you sharing rights.
Okay. What we identified with this site, all those sort of wonderful attributes of this site, there are some very complicated components of it as well. The site is fairly small for the proposed use. It basically would just fit a project of this size in sort of an ideal scenario, but with the additional sort of complications of the geometry and the rather large right-of-way in front of the property. We had to work with city staff and kind of go back and forth as we were looking at sort of different ways that we could fit this project on the site. And we are very excited about where it's sitting. We feel like it is really sort of a sensitive use of a property that Okay, great. Sorry, I was going to back up here. Well, I guess I wanted to sort of speak initially just on kind of our site strategies, because I know that's probably going to be sort of a big component of what we're talking about here today. The principal sort of concerns that we had with the property are the floodplain location on it, which runs really kind of cuts it all the way sort of through the property. So when we looked at this, that was one of our principal concerns. And the way that the geometry of the site is, it really, I'll go ahead. This is a survey of the site here. The northeast corner of the site is really the high point. So the floodplain that really kind of runs through this site zoom in here. The floodplain, 500-year floodplain that runs through the site is really this, right around this line right here. So you can see it basically, all of the sort of southwestern portion of this property is really within that sort of that floodplain area, which is a pretty significant component of how we were sort of approaching this. That line is related to topography, obviously, and that's sort of the height of that line. So what our intention is that we raise the site right now to about a foot where we're placing the building, which would bring us what we feel is like at least probably 18 to 24 inches above what that floodplain line would be in any case. And so that further, I think, sort of protects the building where we're going to be located. The second, significant component on this was just the setbacks, and this is in the CDD. It's the Community Design District. So setbacks are not really dictated in the zoning ordinance. I think it's kind of treated as you're looking at adjacent properties. So what we looked at there were the 50-foot. I'll go to the site plan here, proposed site plan that we're looking at now. A 50-foot shoreland setback, which is this line right here. And then a side yard setback. Right now we've got that at 7 feet. That's one area I would like to maybe talk about a little bit more. It may be more appropriate for us to use a 10-foot setback off of that side yard lot line. Just because this property that's to the north, which is a residential property, is, I believe, two-family residential. I was under the impression that it was under even one family, which is why I had the 7-foot. But if the 10-foot, which is more appropriate for that two-family residential zoning, we could adjust the property to accommodate that. Right now, I think our building setback is right at like 9'4", so we can just kind of shift the buildings very slightly and accommodate that. The front yard setback What we did here is look at the adjacent property, and right now that existing house, the setback off of the curb is approximately 50 feet. What we've done is set back our building here. This is approximately 53 feet. So we're really trying to push it as far back as possible to accommodate the existing conditions and be as sensitive to the adjacent property as possible. So the third main concern here is the right-of-way, and I guess that's the sort of the main sort of consideration that we're really want to work with Public Works on, which is the curb being out here and the property line. That right-of-way varies between 45 feet, to 35 feet off the curb. So it's a significant component of the property in terms of the usable space and the access. Our access is assumed to be off of Falcon Circle rather than Broadway. There's an existing curb cut that's right in this general location, and so we've made the, and in communications also with Mr. Plowman and the staff there too, really the intention there is to pull that, this new drive access as far away from the intersection as possible. And still to leave enough of a buffer, of separation between the adjacent residential drive access. What we've done then, as we've laid this out, was really try to push as much of the actual parking itself onto the property as we can, but we still have a drive aisle that basically cuts down through and connects over to some adjacent parking on the sort of the southwest side of that. We have a total of 21 stalls, which we feel is ample for the needs of this project, and in communications with the city and with city staff, one of the questions was, is this right of way under the jurisdiction potentially even of the county and the county highway, because it's sort of the size of this right of way is really more sort of a vestige, I think, of the fact that this was was county highway previously. And so it did go through some communications with I think the engineer's name was let me see here, Kevin Eslick, who was a highway engineer in charge of permits and construction, and he verified that this property, all the rights of way for this property have been given legally to the city of Monona for your jurisdiction. So that was one of our other concerns, was making sure that this entity and the Public Works is really the sort of the last holder of those rights of way. There are no existing. There are some underground existing gas line. There's a gas line and a fiber optic line in this location, which have been identified, but there are no other concerns from existing utilities in that space. I can go into some more details about the building design, but I guess I could also just maybe pause there, and if there's some questions about that, or if you'd like to talk about the design at this point.
Sure, you can go ahead and talk about the design.
Okay. Well, so the design itself is really intended to be this very sort of simple, modern form, very clean. The intention there is that we're using some very low maintenance and resilient materials. It's a combination of this vertical metal paneling, which is what is shown in white. And I did bring some material samples here with me this evening too, you can look at as well. The intention there is that we've got this sort of nice clean white material there that has these sort of gentle curves. It's arranged in this very sort of random pattern. So we have sort of 4 different profiles that we can interchange and create a very sort of organic and sort of random patterning to that white material. And then that is sort of contrasted with this deep sort of charcoal brown color for the other volume. And these 2 volumes kind of intersect. And then are also sort of mixed in with some rich wood toned materials. So on the exterior, we'd be proposing to use an aluminum material that has a wood grain, a UV stable finish applied to it. and then as it kind of wraps in, it converts to wood when it goes in, and the end effect being that you have this sort of glowing lantern that's this sort of wrapping wood element that really kind of connects the indoors and the outdoors. The property itself, the project itself, is roughly 3,600 square feet, which is pretty close to exactly the same size that they have right now in their existing practice. One of the questions I think from staff was about sort of future expansion, and if that was going to be a concern as we looked at parking and the project. There is no intention for future expansion. I mean, the project is pretty landlocked where it is. And the design is not intended to sort of accommodate any future expansion. So what we have here is a small, general dentistry practice for 2 dentists and their staff, and they really want to keep it kind of in that same size. There's some intention to in the future add photovoltaics to the roof of the project. So we are going to be working with various sort of energy incentives here too for a high performance envelope, but also this idea of some future voltaics, and then putting in some infrastructure for charging stations within the parking lot as well. Exactly how many? I mean, I think we would start out with probably 1 or 2, and then try to sort of install it as a line that could be sort of added to in the future, kind of as that need arises. So the landscaping, we're working with Parkitecture for the landscape design, and the intention there is the property as it is right now has some pretty significant overgrowth of invasive species. Really, most of the trees that are on site right now are either sick trees or have been sort of neglected to a point where they really cannot, I think, be sort of salvaged. And so we've gone through with our landscape architect and marked as many of the trees that we can save that are desirable. And then once those are out, then go back in and then plant in really a nice sort of selection of some aspen trees and some other native species that would go in and really kind of give, I think, a much more appropriate and a much more sensitive type of a landscaping experience. And part of this is related to, I think, the intention of the CDD, which is maintaining the sort of I think it's the sort of the natural aspects as much as possible of these properties, and I think what we're going to be proposing here is really to bring some ecological health back to this site. So, and I think that pretty much covers sort of the overall sort of design, and I can certainly answer specific questions.
Sure, thank you. Anyone else that's here to speak during the public hearing portion of this tonight? Okay, then I will close the public hearing, and we'll move to the pre-hearing conference on request by River Place Dental for consideration of a zoning permit for construction of a new dental office at 605 West Broadway, case number 2-030-2022.
Thank you. So, as the applicant mentioned, the request here is River Place Dental to build a new 3,600 square foot building and move from their current location of River Place. It's a 1-story dental office with associated surface parking. The zoning district that this is located in is the Community Design District, the CDD, and a zoning permit is required due to the proposed construction as well as the new use. The 2016 comp plan lists this property as commercial use in the future land use map, with the current land use map showing this as vacant. Commercial uses defined by in the comp plan as land use for retail, service, commercial, and other office uses. An interesting location here with West Broadway just to the south, the parcel's bound by residential to the north, and across the channel to the west, with another future commercial use to the east, just the other side of Falcon Circle, which is also vacant at this time. The plans, as proposed, 1-story slab-on-grade dental clinic with metal cladding and wood grain siding for a modern aesthetic, All the mechanicals would be located on the building roof, and screening is included within that design. Solar was also mentioned as a future addition to the rooftop clinic. An outdoor patio is proposed for the staff behind the building, closer to the channel as well. As far as the site circulation, they'd be looking to maintain one curb cut along Falcon Circle. There'd be no additional curb cut or access directly off of West Broadway. The sidewalk would remain along West Broadway, would not be extended along Falcon, as there is not any other sidewalk there. But there would be an access point for pedestrians entering the site. It's suggested by city staff that the possibility of adding some striping across the parking there for access, especially given the proximity to the riverfront and adjacent residential properties as well. The unique shape of the lot does pose some challenges with the city right-of-way. The design was conceptually agreeable with city staff in speaking with the Public Works Director, but we'll certainly need Public Works Committee review once the design is finalized here. There's a possibility, as mentioned in the staff comments from Public Works staff, that possibility of some movement there with the building. The applicant has used sort of more traditional single-family, two-family setbacks there, and is very mindful of the 500-year floodplain, but there may be opportunity to potentially tweak that building location based upon the commission feedback. As for parking, commercial uses in the zoning code require 1 space per 300 square feet of gross floor area, which would require 12 parking stalls to meet city code. 21 stalls are proposed, including 1 ADA accessible, and as mentioned, EV was discussed as well in the letter of application. 11 to 12 employees would work on a typical day, leaving around nine stalls for visitors, for patients coming to the site. There would also be the addition of a bike rack as well. Typical business hours would be 7:30 to 4:30 Monday to Friday with no weekend hours, and that would help limit potential conflicts with the adjacent residential uses as well as traffic concerns along West Broadway. Stormwater and lighting plans will be shared as part of the final plans. The applicant has since shared some lighting plans for initial consideration. And as proposed, the poles would potentially be in the city right-of-way, just given the location and the site layout. So again, something to consider as the site layout is discussed. Finally, the landscaping that was proposed is about double the number of points that would be required, as well as 3 times as many of the canopy trees are proposed. There's a varied mix of shrubs, perennials, and trees, and looking to maintain any of the existing vegetation that can be kept, noting that much of that is invasive. So certainly any feedback the Commission may choose to give to the applicant would be helpful at this pre-hearing. The other point to mention here is that the site impervious accounts for about 51% of the total lot size. One thing for consideration as we move to the formal hearing, as well as the green space discussion, would be if the Commission would choose to see some of the right-of-way calculations included as well, if that's being used potentially as part of the parking, for example, if those 2 calculations be included, just at least for reference. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go to the commission. Brendan, since you were feeling neglected the last time, would you like to go first?
In general, I like the considerations that have been taken into the design. I've not worked with this specific paneling material, but I've worked with a variety of them in my career before, and I like it. I think that the white's a little bit much at this scale for me. It's exactly what my wife would want to see, but for me, it's a little bit too much white. But I think that there's, I like it in general, and I especially like all the considerations that were taken and offered in the presentation. Yeah, I think it stands a good chance to be a nice looking building.
Okay. Thank you. Rob, do you want to go next?
Sure. Okay.
I think the building looks fine. I think the major concerns are the site and site circulation. It's a very odd site, and building in this much right-of-way is certainly unprecedented in my time on the commission. I'll be curious to hear what others have to say, but not going into great detail about the design of the building. I'm going to focus kind of more on the site circulation and site design. I had a couple of questions and comments. The first thing was the drive aisle axis. It has 4 different widths coming off the road. It goes from 26 point something to 22 to 20 to 24. I find that to be a little cumbersome.
I'm sorry, and that's what maybe you can kind of.
So if you go to the site plan, and if you come off of Falcon Circle, the entry off of the drive is 26.18 feet. That's the if you go to the site plan, it'll have a dimension for you there. It's the next plan up. There you are.
So we're looking at the width here.
Yep. So coming out the street, first thing I noticed, there was no driveway apron, no curb and gutter either. Maybe that's part of the design, and maybe that could be addressed. But there's no driveway apron. It goes from 26 to 22 to 20 to 24 as you continue through the site.
Yeah, and we are, and I would say, this was sort of a place, we were kind of at a, I wanted to kind of get submitted these plans here to you so we can kind of talk this through. We can certainly sort of add in, the apron and those sort of pieces. I guess speak a little bit to the width. Ideally we would want a 24-foot, wide, sort of width, kind of throughout. We're really kind of threading this needle too of keeping the maximum sort of throat length that we can get, because that was one of our concerns, was coming out and having enough of a throat length that as you turn out, the maneuvering is still functional. The other is minimizing the amount of asphalt that we've got in that right away there too. So we were kind of starting from the back of the property and moving our way over and really trying to kind of keep, so that 22 feet was really deemed, I think, sort of the minimum that we could use for that. The width of the actual curb cut, I think we could certainly we can keep that sort of as consistent, or kind of hit whatever you think we need it to be. If it were going to be 22 feet, and keep that as our consistent sort of dimension, I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, I don't have the right answer for you right now, and that might be a question for Public Works moving forward. But 24, I think, would be the minimum we'd want to see for that. Not 22, I would think, but I would coordinate with Public Works on that potentially. And then with the north entrance, it's just a 90-degree entrance into the site, again, with no apron or radius to that curb. It makes kind of an odd turning movement if you're coming from the north. One major thing is those stalls when you drive in. It's a conflict when you're pulling in your short driveway, parking, and then that's what you have to back out into as well. I understand there's complications with the site, and you're over parked per the code requirement. So maybe there's flexibility in eliminating some stalls. Traditionally on Plan Commission, more parking the better, but that seems like a traffic conflict to me. Just moving through. I had the comment about perhaps striping, if that's going to be a route to go from the main entrance of the building to Broadway. Mm-hmm. Potentially striping that and adding, truncating domes if that's necessary. And then as far as that connection up to the sidewalk there, hopefully that works with that grade, but that could be potentially steep there, depending how that ends up. couple little things. The fence along the property line to the north, it doesn't follow the property line, creating some kind of weird pizza slices in there. Nothing major.
I think part of that, the rationale there was to, because this is right up against that, that adjacent neighbor's property, and there's a lot of, it's a little tricky to kind of right now to really understand kind of where the existing trees are and the ones that are going to stay and the ones that are not. So I think we can certainly be flexible on where that fence goes, and it's probably going to require, sort of the next level too of us like identifying exactly where those, because there are some, I think there's one other sort of significant tree that's in that area there too, but we can sort of address that.
Yeah, this is kind of things that can get figured out. And I did go out there, and it was mostly elms and hawthorn and really not worth salvaging. Moving into the landscape plan here, had a couple of comments. So the whole back property line against the canal area, I was back there today and I looked, and you're right, there's not a lot of salvage to be had back there. I think there's an opportunity for kind of a restored eco buffer between that waterway and the property line. Maybe that's above and beyond, but if you're going to, there's really not a lot to save back there. It's pretty scrubby and mostly invasives.
Yeah.
Just something to think about. I think it could be a real asset to the site and actually create a backdrop from the street, both streets. Landscape material, I think it was okay. Generally, more natives the better. And then the bioretention or the stormwater treatment areas look like they're seeded with a monoculture. Typically, I think a more variable mix is better in case that one variety doesn't take so well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll leave it there and let the rest of the commission speak. Thanks.
Thank you. That's number 2.
I like the design a lot. I actually do like the white. It makes me think of white teeth. So I think it's appropriate. I'm excited just for anything to be there, frankly, although this is really a really sharp design. I'm confused about this seemingly excessive and unnecessary right-of-way. So this is actually more of a question for Doug, but Mr. Tills spoke to, I believe you spoke to the county. I have to chuckle every time I go down Broadway when I'm traveling, 30 miles an hour, and there's a sign that says Highway BW. Highways aren't usually, you're not usually going 30 on the highway. So it seems like this is kind of an antiquated and obsolete right-of-way, and the lot's already challenging enough as it is. So it sounds like now it's Monona's right-of-way.
Yes.
The lot, I've never seen anything happen on that lot other than sometimes a police car is sitting there trying to catch people speeding on Highway BW. So can something be done to change that?
I think that would certainly be a Public Works Committee discussion to be had, but I think there could be, one thing that I will say is that the curb line of Falcon Circle is pretty well established, and I'm not sure that outside of maybe a traditional, more of a 10-foot, maybe 15-foot buffer for a sidewalk in the future, for example, there may be some realignment that could be had here. So that could certainly be a future discussion, which would maybe then adjust this line that would put it much more to just the apron and sort of the entry of the driveway rather than the stalls as well. So that's definitely a discussion to continue, and that I wouldn't want to suggest likelihood of anyway. But the sort of the utility lines there, the yellow and the red, possibly something of a realignment to that possibly could help. But I think that the unique shape and the extensive right-of-way, as mentioned, I think sort of owes to the reasoning why the director was more open to this than maybe in other locations where there would be more of a use to it. I think it would be fair to say. So certainly an ongoing discussion that I think could certainly be had.
Okay, thank you. I don't really have anything else to say other than I think the landscaping looks really great. I'm glad to hear you're going to do some EV charging stations and photovoltaics. So yeah, I'm excited.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Corey?
I agree. I really support this concept in this spot and the fact that despite the challenges that there's interest in trying to make it work. And I think it looks great. So I hadn't thought about the white teeth.
You're welcome.
I will think of that every time. So I know you've thought about a million different options probably, so, but it seems like there is room to turn the building, or I don't know. What I do think works in your favor too is the fact that it's a clinic with appointments, and so it's not like you're having a lot of people that are just dropping in. So it's not like there's a lot of traffic, which I think would help if you did have to, take out a parking spot or two just to get the access in there. I don't, looking at it, I was trying to figure out how it could work too, and I don't have any good suggestions. But I do like that you're considering all those options and you're having those discussions. I think this concept is great. It'll definitely get much better visibility as well for the business than tucked where it is now. So it really does look great. So I like the comment that staff made about making sure that there's pedestrian access to the building too. I guess that would be one thing that I would definitely want to see. I think the landscaping, the attention to detail there is wonderful. I mean, we have a lot of nice things that are happening along that part of the Broadway corridor. So that'll just add to it. And I've kayaked back in there and whew, yeek. So yeah, I agree. There's not much to save. So Chris might have some good suggestions.
You're up.
Chris won. Chris won. Go ahead. You're up.
First, I would like to say I think it's awesome that you want to be here. I think to have a successful Monona business, to find a lot where you can build a permanent home is terrific, and I'm thrilled to see you trying to look at this site. This is a really difficult site. There's a lot of history with this site, and back when the cause owned it, they had us come in and take out 3/4 of the asphalt because they couldn't keep people from parking on it, because it used to be I think it was a used car lot.
Yeah.
And there's just cars over it all the time. People love to park on it. So I think to have someone that's looking at this and figure out a way to use a difficult lot is terrific. I agree, and I don't know the history of why we have such a wide right-of-way there. It makes absolutely no sense unless it was going to be a major road going through there, which we don't have. At one point in time, the city actually considered vacating that part of it so this could combine with that old gas station lot right across, Transport, I think it was, and have one long lot there for some commercial use. That never, of course, materialized. I 100% agree with staff, both the Public Works Director and the planner, that using this right-of-way is appropriate. When you look at where the setbacks are for the asphalt, they're very similar to what we'd see off a curb on most of our commercial sites. A little tight by the throat, but other than that, it's very similar to what we would see, and I agree with it. As far as the building setbacks, I like where you have it. I wouldn't change a thing. We are next to a residential area, but residential, we can be up to 7 feet. Duplexes, it's the same thing. So I think with your 9.5 feet, I think you're good. If you took it the other way, we would be taking away from landscaping between that sidewalk and the building, which would take away from that site. So I think you have enough room back there to do things on both sides of the building. And you're keeping that back away from the water, which is great. As far as the stalls go, I agree with your comment about those backing into the driveway are dangerous. But I disagree with, the code says 12 stalls. You've got 2 doctors working with 4 operatories. You've got probably 3 hygienists. You've got a staff of 11 or 12. You add it all up, you're up to 18, 19, and we all know that some people come when their appointment's ready and sit in the waiting room. So I think you need every stall you have, quite honestly, and I'm sure the doctors know that. Well, this is why you push for stalls. So what I would suggest, I agree with Rob, it's dangerous backing out of those, but I would suggest those are staff stalls. And when you come before the customers, or your patients, sorry, not customers or patients. And when you get there, you're already there when the patients are there, and there's no regular traffic backing in and out of those stalls all the time. So if you just maybe sign them or just make sure staff gets there first. I understand why you went 22, our typical is 24, where you're talking the first part Rob was talking about, but it does still allow you 2-foot overhang over that blacktop, where a curb and gutter on the edge would probably be appropriate to keep somebody from backing over all your landscaping. But I understand that, and I like keeping it away from what would be the future right-of-way or that part of the right-of-way, so we can have a little more green space and landscaping. I know where you turned it to 20, there's no cars backing in and out, so 20 works. You know, that works there. And then you're back to 24, where I would anticipate your main patient parking is, as well as obviously some more employee parking. So I think this is a really, really difficult site, and you've done a really nice job of figuring out how to incorporate what you need into that site. So I wouldn't change a lot of those if it were me. I don't know if you're tongue-in-cheek or not when you said we assumed we'd probably do a curb cut on Falcon. There's no way in the world we'd put a curb cut on Broadway. So.
No, I know. Yes, it was very
So I just had to write that down when you said that. I said, no, absolutely not. The green space, Doug, yes, it would be nice to know what's happening within here too. I would maybe just extend the property line out and say it looks like it's fine, especially with 50% of the area. I'm sure we'll be fine, but it would be good to have for a record, since we're letting them use some of it, to talk about how much green space we have left in there. I think that's just a good catch. The building, it doesn't meet our guidelines for that area whatsoever, but I think it's a good-looking building. And one reason I was here when we wrote those guidelines is we just didn't want buildings going up with aluminum siding, the typical aluminum siding. What you've done with your siding is very unique and I think very attractive. You got a lot of different textures and verticals versus some horizontals and colors. What you've done doesn't look like just a vinyl sided house or something. It's quite attractive. And being on this lot, you're really almost in a standalone area where you're really not next to any other architecture. So I would say I think it's a very attractive building. I think it's fine right there. I think it stands there, and I think I'm good with that. The dumpster screening needs to be the same material as the building. You have to pick a building or something, but it needs to be architecturally compatible with the building. So especially in that really exposed area, just putting a wood fence around it really would just not be very, not work.
And I do agree with that. And I think the intention here, and you can probably see it kind of in this picture, is that the tie-in between the wood material that's on, would be the same tone, so you would get that sort of tonal sort of consistency. I don't know if that is enough of a tie-in, but that was the intention, that you would have that, the staining on that would match the wood tone that's on the building.
Yeah, and in 3 years it won't. You pretty much, if you're going to use, I think you probably should look at using the same material.
The metal
yeah.
panel? Okay.
Yeah, stained wood, we all know it changes colors as its life goes on. And it would be a nice tie into the building.
Okay, yeah.
I think there's curb and gutter on Falcon Circle, isn't there? I don't recall that. I'm pretty sure there is.
Yeah. Along the street. Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Was that what you were talking about, Rob? No curb and gutter there?
There's no curb and gutter in the site.
Yeah, I'd agree with the site to look at there is where you need to, especially as tight as this, you need to control drainage, you need to direct it, and get it over to your storm sewer management facility.
Yeah. There will be curb and gutter on the site. Yeah.
I don't know how the county looks at it, but like I said, this site used to be virtually covered in asphalt, and I don't know if you can get credit for that when you look at your existing versus proposed or not. It was taken out to keep people from parking in there. So I don't know if any credit can be given for that or not, but this site was covered. And old aerials will show that. There will be some record of that on old aerials. Yes.
I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but maybe it was the site across the street. Was there environmental
Across the
issues?
street, that was a transport gas station. Yeah.
Is there any that we know about with this
I'm
site?
not aware of it. What I remember even going way back was a used car lot.
Okay.
We did have an environmental study on the
Okay.
site, yeah. And when they did the geotech, because they did some geotech pits that they were digging, and True North, environmental consultant, was out there on site at the time there too, just sort of observing to see if there were any sort of obvious signs of anything, and that everything came back clear, at least from that perspective. So it wasn't a formal environmental study, but that was kind of the cursory look that we took at it on that. And he did some research on the history of the site there too, and determined that he didn't think that it was a high risk. Obviously, once we excavate the site out there too, there's always the chance that there might be something, but.
Yeah, well, that's great that you did that. So.
Perfect. Anything else, Chris?
No, I think you did a great job of trying to fit this on that site.
Thanks.
Brian?
I think it's a wonderful project. I won't necessarily just repeat things just to repeat it. I think you've done a wonderful job here. Just a couple clarifying points. On the building, the wood grain material, is that a metal material as well?
It's an aluminum panel. I mean, you can see it. You'll be able to kind of see it there too. Yes, the aesthetic is wood grain, but it is an exterior, commercial exterior material. Probably what you're seeing on a lot of the projects that are around here now. It's called Longboard is the name of the manufacturer.
Okay. So all of the material on the exterior of the building is some type of metal product. Okay.
Now I did on the materials there did bring in some cement fiber, just on that board to look at as an alternate. The intention there would be the same sort of horizontal banding, and the reason why I brought it in was just to look at that as a possibility for either for cost savings, or if we were looking at some alternates in terms of getting materials. Right now we kind of look for multiple options if one is not available. So I guess the question here would be, is there flexibility to kind of look at two alternate materials with the same sort of general patterning and and effect? Is that an option on these, or do you really need a final material at this point?
At this point, no, for sure.
Okay.
I only brought that up because I remember reading wood grain and then looking at the fence and the dumpster enclosure, trying to kind of figure out and make sense of kind of those two pieces. So yeah, I agree. The more we can tie in the fence and the enclosure with the building, the better off. Particularly when it comes to materials. If we're able to share the materials, I think it will help with consistency for the long run for you. The other part that jumped out at me had to do with the staff comment, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand it because it's not necessarily making sense for me. So it has to do with that the building was rotated counterclockwise and pushed to the southwestern corner. I don't know how that can be done. You would be putting it right in the middle of the floodplain, but the comment says that it wouldn't be in floodplain. Chris, number one.
The floodplain they're talking about is the 500 year, not
Yeah.
the 100 year. There's no way we can do anything in the 100 year floodplain. So.
But it would still be placing it within
Yeah,
the 500, but
Yeah, and you'd have to fit it. I think it's not up to me to comment on that. It's up to them. I don't think that's the best solution.
I can give kind of a quick answer to that too, because we did, once we got these comments on Friday, I did go through an exercise of looking at, at that as an option. I think if you looked at it just purely on plan, you can kind of see how these pieces kind of get shifted around. Obviously, when we're designing, we're using setbacks as hard and fast. And I think that other comment about relaxing the shore lens setback to accommodate this struck me as a little odd. And obviously we didn't design it thinking that we could get a variance on a rear setback. The bigger issue is the floodplain location and the sloping of that site dropping away. So we'd be moving it onto a portion of the site where the site is dropping away, and then I think just the grading of trying to build that site back up, I think could be really complicated in terms of interfering with drainage patterns. So I understand fully, and when you do kind of rearrange those pieces, you can kind of see a pathway to just having drive access back there. You're going to get, I think it's fewer stalls than we have. I think I could get 20, if I were just completely maximizing it. So that's, it's going to be a challenge, I think, to really at least kind of match those pieces. And obviously, if we can come to an arrangement where the right-of-way is in play in this piece, that's obviously our preference, I think, for keeping the building, and I think it's best location for the floodplain issues.
Yeah, I didn't have any other additional comments. Just to clarify, I think it's a great project. Excited. Thanks.
Great. So I would simply add my kudos, as it relates to the overall design. I assume that you saw the Director of Public Works comment related to eventual dredging. And, as you probably know, by ordinance, that's all based on the length of your shoreline. And is it, and I too have kayaked there many times, it's really bad. And is there already a retaining wall back there? To your point around the slope?
There is a retaining wall, but it's kind of, it's difficult to really ascertain, if it's broken or if it's, kind of what the condition of it is. I think, because of so much has been sort of moved around, I think, with the, the trees and the sort of the roots of the trees back there.
Yeah.
So I think it is a component that we need to probably dive into in a little more detail and kind of really understand. The other component, I think this too, and I think one of your comments was about that buffer, the space between our property line and and the water's edge, and there is a probably 6 to 8 foot sort of section there, of again sort of continuation of sort of the same sort of trees and landscaping that we do need to kind of because it doesn't make any sense for us to just sort of stop our improvements right there. If there are these sort of ratty looking trees, that would be kind of the last part of it. So I think we do need to, and I don't know if that's if that's the city of Monona or if it's DNR or who controls that sliver of property there between the property line and the edge of the water, I guess would be the question there.
Chris?
Anything above ordinary high water would be the purview of the city of Monona, and anything below ordinary high water mark would be the purview of the DNR.
Okay. So there is a section there that like I said, I think it's probably varies between 6 and 8 feet long, kind of along that edge that now, sounds like it is City of Monona's responsibility. So we would certainly love to work with the City of Monona to kind of collectively come to a solution there.
Okay. Great. Again, I think the design overall, as is pointed out, it doesn't really go with anything else that's over there, but it is kind of, it's on an island in a sense, in many respects anyway, and I think it looks great. Do you feel like you've gotten appropriate feedback, appropriate direction from us? Is there anything that you're confused about?
No, I think the only question for me would just be, it goes to Public Works Committee, or is that kind of the next sort of phase in terms of what do you need permission-wise from Public Works before you can grant approval for our proposal?
So I would say, following this, I would sort of ask the team to finalize the design. Any more layout changes, especially as it relates to the right-of-way, the location of the building, then I would suggest taking that to Public Works Committee with that proposal for their consideration. And at that point then, assuming there is buy-in and consensus from Public Works, I would then suggest it come back here for a formal consideration.
Okay. Is that a formal approval that we're seeking from Public Works, or we're just asking for their general approval? I mean, is there an application portion, I guess, to that?
We have the chair of Public Works.
So we can have you work with city staff to make
Okay.
sure that we get it on an upcoming agenda. I think it's kind of a twofold discussion. One would be like the concept of a building within the right of way. But I think layered on that same discussion is the idea of like, do we need that level of right of way, or do we want to abandon that right of way? So I think we'd have those two pieces as part of the key discussion.
Okay.
We could probably add on the third point regarding the trees on the backside of the shoreline.
Okay. Kind of, yeah, lump both those together.
Yep. So
Okay.
between Doug and our staff and Public Works, we can make sure that we get that on the upcoming agenda.
Okay, great.
To your question about material and supply chain and kind of getting an alternate approval, my record, I don't recall having ever done that. Is that something that would just be, we would approve it from a plan commission level, and then if you had a change, could that just be handled by staff to approve a material that's appropriate?
I think my suggestion would be, there'd be a condition in a potential approval that says materials consistent with renderings or, as proposed during the final, with samples to be submitted to city staff. Any concern comes back to Plan Commission. That would be kind of my thinking behind that. But if it's a metal, metal finish, but it's a wood grain, but if there's a vinyl option or something that appears pretty similar, something like that, maybe with better availability, but significant change, significant aesthetic changes probably comes back. That would be my preference with that.
Okay. Does that
Is there a
answer your
minor
question?
Is there just a minor alteration process within the city of Monona?
Typically, it would just return, so this is coming through for a zoning permit. Typically, it would just be a revision to that. So it would be one meeting if it did come back anyway. I would imagine that it would just be a simple one meeting with an additional zoning permit conditions effectively that approves or approves with conditions.
Okay. And I do have one more question, I guess, regards to setbacks. So I'm not currently showing any front yard setback, codified a front yard setback. Would you prefer me to, we're just showing its setback, the distance setback from the curb of the face of the building is what I'm showing on there. Would it be better to give an arbitrary or, codified front yard setback that's shown on the site plan, similar to the side yard and the rear yard that we're showing?
From my perspective, the CDD, the zoning district does not have specific setbacks. So, really, the site plan scaled as was submitted, we'd be able to use that. As mentioned, the language is typically in keeping with adjacent properties. So, my interpretation would be that any approval with the location as shown would be interpreted as it being deemed appropriate.
Okay. Right.
Chris?
Couple things triggered there. Well, one I forgot. This was going to throw in my 10 cents. I agree with everybody else that's junk trees back there. There's not much very good. But when we talk about being in the right-of-way, we do have a lot of precedent for that. All the way up and down Monona Drive, we have allowed parking and all kinds of things, driveways in the right-of-way, because that's got that unusually wide right-of-way. So that's not unusual for us. And to change that right-of-way is quite a deal. I mean, it'll take quite a bit of time. So I would suggest if it's possible for Public Works to approve it the way it is now with conditions, since it's still our right-of-way, but that would be a long-term thing if it pays for the city to abandon that. And I agree, Doug, what we look at is how it fits with all the other buildings in the area. So I think the way you showed it is much more appropriate, that you're 53 feet back from the curb. Because what we see, what people see when they go out there, they don't see a right of way, they don't see a property line, they see the curb, they see the building, they see everything with respect to where the street is. So I think that's the way the commission's looking at it tonight.
I just had one more follow-up question, even as I know that Chris #1 has a familiarity with a number of staff in a dental office. Can you because you did indicate when you were talking about parking earlier, how many staff
Yeah.
are you expected to be there?
They do, currently, right now, they have a staff of, and it varies between 11 and 12,
Okay.
kind of at any given time. They do have a lot of sort of overlapping and, and staggering.
Yep.
So there are probably more than average number of, three-quarter time employees there. So that's why there is, for the number of operatories that you're seeing there, the staffing, can kind of vary depending on sort of their staggering their schedule, but 11 to 12.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Any comments, questions, other from you?
No, thank you. That's really great
Okay.
feedback. So
Terrific.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll move to reports of staff and commission members. Staff report.
Thank you. Economic development update. I just wanted to share a couple items that will be coming through the CDA tomorrow night, the Community Development Authority. There will be a development agreement that is being considered with the Monona Garden project. The term sheet and sort of the general parameters were agreeable, and so that will be discussed tomorrow and potentially recommended to City Council following that, depending how it goes. The team are very eager to get started on that, so that one is progressing well. And a term sheet will also be shared again tomorrow with the Bloom project, and so that will be just as way of process. That's kind of the parameters of what goes into a potential development agreement. But it's about getting agreement with those terms before anything else is drafted. So,
Sorry, Doug, which project did you say?
The Bloom, the
Bloom.
the BMO.
Yep. I
Yes,
thought you said blue, and I was scratching my head.
I must pronunciate better. So those are both going to be on CDA tomorrow, and a couple Renew Monona applications moving forward as well. Upcoming Plan Commission items. I did just want to ask the Commission their preference for the potential site visit to the North Point project tomorrow. It's supposed to be some rain in the forecast. No wind or cold this time, but potentially the rain. So that is tentatively planned for 11:30 tomorrow. Last time we checked, it was about a 50% chance of rain. So just wanted to gauge interest from those here, if that would be, if it was worth just pushing again, and I can reach out to the team tomorrow.
Y'all have umbrellas?
Yes.
Do we know what the wind is supposed to be in addition to the rain?
I do not.
What is the time?
11:30.
I didn't either.
I put that, it was at the bottom of the packet.
On
Friday.
I probably won't make it.
No worries.
Yeah. Again, if you guys, if you do push, I can be there on next Monday. I can't be there now, but I can be there next week.
Since it was at the bottom, and I don't know if everybody else saw it, how do other people?
Well, and Brandon was one of, he was the main requester.
Yeah.
So I think we push it if we.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
I don't feel the need to go, so don't do it based on me. But I know
Yeah.
Brandon was the.
Well, there's several people here that, I mean, you haven't gone over there, have you?
No, I'd like to go,
Yeah.
but I don't need to go tomorrow. I can go whenever.
Okay.
If you guys
Great.
want to.
Then why don't we push it?
I'll push
We'll
that.
wait for you.
I have Brandon's availability, so I'll just send a note out tomorrow. We'll push the tomorrow's visit, and we'll reschedule possibly for early next week. I think it was Monday next week. Brandon had mentioned, so I'll check that works with the applicant, and we can go from there.
Doodle poll number 3?
Yes. Third time's the charm.
Good.
And then upcoming Plan Commission items, the Neutral project, the Bloom, the Monona Drive redevelopment, they will be coming through. For a few of their items, the CSM did receive Plan Commission or a Public Works Committee recommendation, the rezoning as part of that as well. So a couple of those things will be moving forward at the next meeting for formal consideration, as well as mentioned, the street, the private drive discussion as part of the North Point project. I've been in touch with the engineer working on that, and they're aware that that needs to be addressed prior to any PIP consideration for the North Point development project. So trying to get that scheduled as soon as possible. So most likely that would be one meeting, but with they're using Viabeca, so we'd most likely use Strand Associates to review that sort of prior to any commission meeting. Given the location itself is somewhat determined by the CSM already, so I think having that formal review would be helpful for that discussion. So they'll all most likely be moving forward on the 14th. Certainly the Neutral project, I have the materials already. That's it for me.
Thank you. Do we have any Plan Commission requests for information for the staff? Any requests? I would just let the Commission know again, as reported at the last meeting, we had 2 public hearings, or I should say public information meetings scheduled around Monona Transit, and actually a proposal from Madison Metro, to provide transit services in Monona. And the first meeting was held last week on the 20th. The next one is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock here in the library. So if any of you are interested in attending, I would just, since I know we talk about transit and transit availability on just about every development that we look at, I thought I would mention there's also going to be another one on November 16th at 10 a.m. in the morning at the Senior Center. If that's of interest to you, and they're certainly being streamed and being captured on community media, YouTube as well.
What are you hearing so far?
I would say that it's kind of a mixed bag. Some people are enthusiastic about it, and other people not so much.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. I'm surprised people think Plan Commission has something to do with it, so they chatter in your ears.
Yeah.
Why are some people against it?
Understandably, seniors are concerned about the lift and losing the lift, potentially losing the lift, and having to shift to Madison Metro paratransit in some cases, or use regular bus, Madison Metro bus. I think there's some concerns about larger buses traveling through the Monona streets. I would say those are the two biggest things. And of course, the people that are in favor of it are excited about having a lot more accessibility, a lot more hours to be able to grab Metro, and a lot being able to hook up to other routes to get pretty much anywhere in the region. I think that's it. We can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move adjournment.
Second. Imagine that. Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.